Good morning. This is the class for first year BA, continuing with the Mahabharata story and the various aspects of it. We have gone through the main, that is plot. Now we go to the synopsis of the entire Mahabharata, and then with regard to the redaction and little bit of the technical side of it that you have in the note, you can have just read through that and that would suffice that. So we go to the synopsis and little bit of the history or the older generation that will give us a better picture of what is this whole Mahabharata about. The core story of the work is that of a dynastic struggle for the throne of Hastinapura, the kingdom ruled by Kuru clan. The two collateral branches of the family that participate in the struggle are the Kaurava and Pandava. Although the Kaurava is the senior branch of the family, Duryodhana, the eldest of Kaurava, is younger to Yudhishthira, the eldest of Pandava. Both Duryodhana and Yudhishthira claim for the first line to inherit the throne. So in the synopsis of the story, it is, we can say that the whole struggle is for the throne of Hastinapura, that being the capital, and they want, or the two groups who are claiming to be occupying that throne in Hastinapura is the two collateral branches of the family, Kauravas and Pandavas. Kauravas with their father, that is Dhritarashtra, he being born blind, he is elder to Pandu. So these are the two brothers. And therefore it is collateral branches of the family, Kuru family. And one, that is Dhritarashtra with 100 sons and Pandu with 5 sons. So Pandavas and Kauravas. And here the eldest son of Dhritarashtra, Duryodhana, in comparison to the years, he is younger to Yudhishthira, the elder son of Pandu. So Pandu had 5 sons and Dhritarashtra had 100 sons. Although Pandu was younger, but he had the children earlier than that of the Duryodhana, the Dhritarashtra, and Duryodhana being the eldest among them in comparing to the years, he was younger to Yudhishthira. And therefore, the claiming comes here. Both of them, both the elder sons of the Kauravas and Pandavas, claim for the kingship in Hastinapura. Since Dhritarashtra was born blind, and that was a negative point for him to be the king, and therefore it passed on to his younger brother, that is Pandu. And therefore, from Pandu onwards, the succession. So that is the question here, or the succession story. Dhritarashtra was still alive, but Pandu was dead, and when Pandu dies early, all the 5 sons also came under the sort of care of, or uncle's care of Dhritarashtra. So all the sons of Pandu and that of Dhritarashtra, they were together, education, living together, eating, and all types of learning, everything was together. Till the question came about the succession to the throne. That was the point of discord among them. Duryodhana with his uncle Shakuni, we can see them plotting, planning to eliminate Pandavas, or the 5 sons of Pandu, and they don't want to have anything with these 5 because the presence of them will always be an eyesore for Duryodhana and party, because they will be claiming at least the half the kingdom, because they are collateral branches of the family, Pandavas and Kauravas. And therefore, somehow to get them eliminated and then have the entire kingdom for Kauravas alone. So this is the fight, or this is a claim that was going on, and the fight which went on. So that is a bit of synopsis into why this fight broke out and what was. And since there was no compromise could be achieved or arrived at, therefore the only way to settle the issue was to the great war. The struggle culminates in the great battle of Kurukshetra, in which Pandavas are ultimately victorious. The battle produces complex conflicts of kinship and friendship, instances of family loyalty and duty taking precedence over what is right as well as converse. So a lot of things were at stake with regard to when the war ended. Ultimately, Pandavas were victorious. And since then, a lot of questions with regard to what is morality, what is the kinship and friendship, instances of family loyalty and the duty taking precedence over what is right as well as the converse. The Mahabharata itself ends with the death of Krishna. So Krishna was a party here. He was one of the princes. And then once the war was declared, then all the princes and the little small princely states, they had to take a decision either for the side of Kauravas or for the side of Pandavas. So that was only choice they had. They had to take the side. So therefore it became a great war, Mahabharata, a big war that was, the whole of Bharat was involved in it, the whole of India was involved in that great battle. So, and Krishna was also part of this, or one of the princes who took. But there is also a side story. It's a story built into another or knit into another story, that he himself was incarnation of Vishnu, and there it was he who the charioteer for Arjun, and then he wanted to, or he was unwilling to fight, and there is a lot of discussion that is going on at the onset or outbreak of war, and the conversation between Krishna and Arjuna, that becomes the Gitopadesha, a part of Mahabharata. So there is also a lot of story within the story. Then later on we are being told that when Arjuna was unwilling to fight, and then feeling the remorse of conscience, and then he's thinking that what's the use of this kingdom when I have to kill everyone, all my kith and kin, all the relations whom I know, my own teachers, my own uncle and all the relations, and then devoid of them, what is that kingdom, what happiness, what joy can be there without being in the company of them? So that makes him to give up, until he was telling that he will better go back to the forest and live a peaceful, or he did not want anything to do with the kingdom, because it is implying a lot of bloodshed, constant war, struggle and all that. He wanted to be away from such, and that was what his desire. Wherein Krishna intervenes and tells him, as a Kshatriya, he has a duty. The dharma of him is to restore the truth. So therefore, we see the events which are taking place. So once Krishna himself reveals his true identity to Arjuna, to make him believe that he is not an ordinary person. So Mahabharata itself ends with the death of Krishna, and the subsequent end of this dynasty and descent of Pandava brothers to heaven. So towards the end of the Mahabharata, we see after 36 or quite some other few more years, we see them slowly all this dynasty disappearing. Starting with one by one as they move towards the North Pole. That is depicting that their time has come to depart from this world. So once Krishna was dead, his dynasty and all that was disappearing, then the Pandavas knew that it was time for them to depart from this world. So they set on that path of purgation or the entry into heaven. It also marks the beginning of Hindu age, Kali Yuga, the fourth and final age of humankind, in which great values and noble ideas have crumbled, and people are heading towards the complete dissolution of right action, morality, and virtue. So many things will be at stake in the Kali Yuga. So, got the 4 ages. So, the last one is the Kali Yuga, that is a total annihilation or dissolution, and then comes another new age. That is in synopsis what we can say about the story. Now, a little more, we need to look back to the older generation, how the turn of events have come. So, a little bit of looking into the older generations. King Janmajeya's ancestor Shantanu, the king of Hastinapura, had a short-lived marriage with the goddess Ganga. So we go to the little bit of history with regard to the ancestry. King Janmajeya's ancestor Shantanu, the king of Hastinapura, had a very short-lived marriage with the goddess Ganga and has a son, that is Devavrata, later called Bhishma, a great warrior, who becomes the heir apparent. So apparently Bhishma or the Devavrata is going to be the heir, the son of Shantanu, who had a short marriage with the goddess Ganga and had a son, that is Devavrata, later to be called Bhishma, who becomes their apparent heir to the kingdom, that is the Hastinapura. Many years later, when King Shantanu goes hunting, he sees Satyavati, the daughter of the chief fisherman. So this is a little bit of looking back into the history, what has happened. And then Shantanu falls for her and asks her father for her hand. Her father refuses to consent to the marriage unless Shantanu promises to make any future sons of Satyavati the king upon his death. So that is the condition which the father of Satyavati wants King Shantanu to make the promise. To resolve his father's dilemma, Devavrata agrees to relinquish his right to the throne. So here comes how the rightful heir to the kingdom, that is Hastinapura, was Devavrata, the son of Shantanu in goddess Ganga. And Shantanu later, sometime later, he had a very short married life with goddess Ganga, and had only one son, that is Devavrata, later on named as Bhishma, a great warrior. So he is the rightful heir to Hastinapura, but after his father. But then his father later on goes for a great hunting, and there he meets Satyavati, the daughter of the chief fisherman. And he wanted to have her and asks her father to give her in marriage. But the father refuses unless Shantanu promises him that any children, that is any male children coming out of this marriage wedlock, they would be the heirs to the kingdom. If only he promises that this would be done, then he would give her in marriage. So here comes the conflict between Devavrata and then the proposal or the marriage, the would-be marriage. So what did Devavrata do? In order to make his father happy or to ease the situation, he relinquishes his right to the throne. So Devavrata says, okay, that's fine. I want my father to be happy, and he is the king now, and he can have his wishes, and I relinquish my right to the throne, and any children that is born out of this wedlock between Shantnu's father and Satyavati, they will be the rightful heirs to the throne. As the fisherman is not sure about the princess children honoring the promise, Devavrata also takes a vow of lifelong celibacy to guarantee his father's promise. So the chief of the fishermen, he is still more not very sure whether a promise simply said whether it would be kept or not. So he wanted to be very sure or cocksure that whatever be the promise which the king makes, it will be executed and should be. So he sees to it that in no way Devavrata will come as an obstacle for the sons of Satyavati to be the heirs of the throne. And therefore, not only the promise which Devavrata makes, that was not satisfactory for the father of Satyavati, and therefore Devavrata, for life he takes lifelong celibacy to guarantee his father's wish or the promise which he would be making. So that is how we come to, or the two sons, or the sons which are born from the wedlock of Shantanu with Satyavati. Now Shantanu has two sons by Satyavati, Chitragatha and Vichitravairya. So two sons were born in that marriage. Upon Shantanu's death, Chitragatha becomes king. He lives a very short and uneventful life and dies. Vichitravairya, the younger son, rules Hastinapura. Meanwhile, the king of Kashi arranges a Swayamvara for his three daughters, neglecting to invite the royal family of Hastinapur. So this is, we are looking into a little bit of the past, how things have happened. So starting in connection with the kingdom, that is Hastinapura. And King Shantanu was the ruler there, or the king, and he had a son in the marriage with the goddess Ganga, and that was what was the name of that, who became the Bhishma later, that is and the rightful heir to the Hastinapura kingdom. And King Shantanu goes on a hunting and meets Satyavati, whom he wanted to marry. Now the father of Satyavati, maybe a shrewd person, he wouldn't simply yield to the marriage proposal because he is the king. He wanted the king to promise that sons born out of this wedlock are going to be the heirs of the kingdom, and not his own son, or the son whom he has got. And therefore the king promises, but then Bhishma, he had to back, or he has to say that, or he has to relinquish his right to the kingship. But that was not satisfactory for the father of Satyavati, and therefore he is made to take lifelong celibacy. So therefore there wouldn't be any progenies for Bhishma. So that was the reason why he relinquished, or he remained a celibate all his life, in order to fulfill the promise which his father made to the fisherman, the king of the fishermen, or the chief of the fishermen, and then Satyavati's sons. The two sons Satyavati had in Shantanu, Chitragada and Vichitravirya. Chitragada lived, or he was the elder one, and he became king, lives a very short and uneventful life and dies. Vichitravirya, the youngest son, rules Hastinapura. Now meanwhile, the king of Kashi arranges Swayamvara for his three daughters, neglecting to invite the royal family of Hastinapura. In order to arrange the marriage of the young Vichitravirya, Bhishma attends the Swayamvara of the three princes of Amba, Ambika, Ambalika. So now Bhishma he has a promise to remain celibate all through his life. Now in order to arrange the marriage of Vichitravirya, Bhishma attends this marriage which was not invited. The royal family was not invited there, of the Hastinapura. And therefore, he, in order to thinking of arranging the marriage of Vichitravirya, Bhishma attends that, the Swayamvara of the three princes of Ampa, Ambika, Ambalika. They are uninvited and proceeds to abduct all the three. So Ambika and Ambalika consent to be married to Vichitravirya. So Ambika and Ambalika. So Amba did not agree. Ambika and Ambalika, since they were abducted from there, and all the three were abducted by Bhishma and brought to Hastinapura. Two of them, Ambika and Ambalika, they agreed to consent to be married to Vichitravirya. The eldest or the oldest prince Amba, however, informs Bhishma that she wishes to marry King Shalva, whom Bhishma defeated at the Swayamvara. So in the Swayamvara, what is that? There will be a competition, and whoever wins the competition, he is going to be the one who is going to get the hand of the bride. So there Bhishma defeats all the other competitors, and then all the three are abducted by him to Hastinapura. Then Amba she wanted to marry Shalva, wishes to marry the king of Shalva, whom Bhishma defeated at the Swayamvara. Bhishma lets her leave to marry King of Shalva, but Shalva refuses to marry her, still smarting at the humiliation at the hands of Bhishma. So this is the intrigue here. So Amba wanted to marry the king of Shalva, whom Bhishma had defeated. Now Bhishma said to Amba, "You are free, go and marry king of Shalva." But then king of Shalva refuses to marry Amba because of still ruminating over the defeat or the humiliation he experienced at the hand of Bhishma. Amba then returns to marry Bhishma, but he refuses due to his vow of celibacy. So this is the problem. So Bhishma had promised to remain celibate all through his life, but attends the marriage of Swayamvara in order to get Vichitravirya, or seek a bride for Vichitravirya. That was his intention. Now, having won the competition, he takes all the three of them to Hastinapura as wives to Vichitravirya. Two of them, Ambika and Ambalika agreed to the proposal and they were ready to marry. Only Amba remained stern that she was not going to marry Vichitravirya. Rather, she wanted to marry the king of Shalva, whom Bhishma had defeated in the Swayamvara, at Swayamvara, the competition. Now, when Bhishma allowed her to pursue her own desire of going back and marrying king of Shalva, And then when she approaches King of Shalva, he refuses. He says, no, I am not going to marry you because I was humiliated by Bhishma and therefore I am not going to marry. Then Amba returns to Bhishma and tells him to marry her. Then Bhishma tells her or reveals her about his vow of celibacy. Amba becomes enraged and becomes Bhishma's bitter enemy, holding him responsible for her plight. Later, she is reborn to King Drupada as Shikhandi or Shikhantini and causes Bhishma's fall with the help of Arjuna in the battle of Kurukshetra. So this is a little bit of history how Bhishma is defeated and killed. All the different plans. So Amba had a grudge against Bhishma for not marrying her because of his vow of celibacy. At the same time, he won the competition and brought all the three for Vichitravirya, which was not to her liking. Then Amba was complaining that, or she was a bitter enemy of Bhishma, holding him responsible for her plight. Later, she is reborn to King Drupada as Shikhanti or Shikhantini and causes Bhishma's fall with the help of Arjuna in the battle of Kurukshetra. So there we have a little bit of looking back into the history. Then the Pandava and Kaurava princes. When Vichitravirya dies young, without any heirs, Satyavati asks her first son Vyasa to father children with the widows. So when Vichitravirya dies without any heirs, so he had now two Ambika and Ambalika. So Vichitravirya dies young without any heirs. Satyavati asks her first son Vyasa to father children with the widows. The eldest, Ambika, shuts her eyes when she sees him, and so her son Dhritarashtra is born blind. Ambika turns pale and bloodless upon seeing him, and thus her son Pandu is born pale and unhealthy. The term Pandu may also mean jaundiced. Due to the physical challenges of the first two children, Satyavati asks Vyasa to try again. However, Ambika and Ambalika sent their maid instead to Vyasa's room. Vyasa fathers a third son, Vidura, by the maid. He is born healthy and grows up to be one of the wisest characters in Mahabharata. He serves as Prime Minister, Mahamantri, to King Pandu and King Dhritarashtra. So you see the turn of events from the Hastinapura dynasty or the kingdom, we come to down to the present, the Pandu and or the Kauravas and Pandavas. When Vichitravirya, that is the son of Shantanu in Satyavati, he dies, or the wives were brought to him by Bhishma, who won the Swayambara competition, but he himself could not be the bride because he had already taken a lifelong celibacy in order to back the promise of his own father or substantiate the promise of his father would be definitely done or definitely valued or revered in the course of time. Therefore, Bhishma himself could not rear any son. So only he wanted the best for Vichitravirya, and he went to join the competition and abducted all the three, Amba, Ambika, Ambalika. Ambika and Ambalika, they agreed to marry Vichitravirya, whereas Amba remained stern or stubborn and did not want to. And when the king whom she wanted to marry refused to marry her on account of the humiliation he experienced, then Amba returns to Bhishma and tells him to marry her. Then Bhishma tells her about his lifelong celibacy, the vow of celibacy, and then she becomes a bitter enemy to Bhishma, and it is through her rebirth as a Shikhandi that the downfall of Bhishma is brought about. Now, Vichitravirya has got two wives now, Ambika and Ampalika. And when Vichitravirya died without having any sons, Satyavati asks her first son, Vyasa, to father children with the widows of Vichitravirya. The eldest Ambika shuts her eyes when she sees Vyasa, and so her son Dhritarashtra is born blind. Ambika turns pale and bloodless upon seeing, and thus her son Pandu is born pale and unhealthy. The term Pandu may also mean jaundiced. Due to the physical challenges of these two sons, Satyavati asks Vyasa to try once again. However, Ambika and Ampalika send their maid instead to Vyasa's room. Vyasa fathers the third son Vidura by the maid. He is born healthy and grows up to be one of the wisest characters in Mahabharata. He serves as Prime Minister Mahamantri to King Pandu and King Dhritarashtra. When the princess grew up, Dhritarashtra is about to be crowned king by Bhishma when Vidura intervenes and uses his knowledge of politics to assert that a blind person cannot be the king. So when the princess grew up, Dhritarashtra is about to be crowned king by Bhishma when Vidura intervenes and uses his knowledge of politics to assert that a blind person cannot be king. This is because a blind man cannot control and protect his subjects. The throne is then given to Pandu because of Dhritarashtra's blindness. So the two sons from Ambika and Ampalika, one is Dhritarashtra, born blind, one is Pandu, who is pale and unhealthy. So when the princess grew up, then were about to be throned as king. So the elder one naturally would be the rightful heir to the kingdom, and therefore Bhishma was going to crown Dhritarashtra as the king. Then Vidura, the third son seared by, that is Vyasa, in the maids of Ambika and Ampalika, that is Vidura, he intervenes and tells that a blind man cannot be the king. That's an impediment, and therefore because he will not be able to control and protect his subjects, the throne is then given to Pandu because Dhritarashtra's blindness. Pandu marries twice, to Kunti and Madri. Dhritarashtra marries Gandhari, a princess from Gandhara, who blindfolds herself so that she may feel the pain that her husband feels. Her brother Shakuni is enraged by this and vows to take revenge on Kuru family. One day, when Pandu is relaxing in the forest, he hears the sound of a wild animal. He shoots an arrow in that direction of the sound. However, the arrow hits the sage Kidama, who curses him that if he engages in a sexual act, he will die. Pandu then retires to the forest along with his two wives, and his brother Dhritarashtra rules thereafter, despite his blindness. So this is how the turn of the story or the events which are taking place. Now as the princes grew up, both, that is Dhritarashtra and Pandu, and when they were of age, then Bhishma wanted to crown the elder one as the king. But Vidura, the third son, seared by Vyasa in the maid of Ambika and Ampalika, so he intervened. So he became one of the very wisest characters in Mahabharata, who became the prime minister for both Dhritarashtra, Pandu and Dhritarashtra. So because Dhritarashtra was born blind, he intervened and said that now it's not permitted for a blind man to be a king. He will not be in a position to understand the subjects. Therefore, the kingship was transferred to Pandu. Pandu had married twice, that is to Kunti and Madri. Dhritarashtra marries Gandhari, a princess from Gandhara, who blindfolds herself so that she may feel the pain that her husband feels. Her brother Shakuni is enraged by this and vows to take revenge on the Kuru family. One day when Pandu is relaxing in the forest, he hears the sound of a wild animal. He shoots an arrow in that direction of the sound. However, the arrow hits the sage Kidama, who curses him that if he engages in a sexual act, then he will die. Pandu then retires to the forest along with his two wives, leaving his brother Dhritarashtra to rule thereafter despite his blindness. Pandu's older queen, that is Kunti, however, had been given a boon by the sage Durvasa that she could invoke any god using a special mantra. So now Pandu has got a curse on him because of that he shot an arrow and it went and hit the sage Kidama, and he cursed that if ever Pandu engages in sexual act, he would die. Meanwhile, Pandu's elder or older queen, Kunti, however, had been given a boon by sage Durvasa that she could invoke any god using special mantra. Kunti uses this boon to ask Dharma, the god of justice, Vayu, the god of wind, and Indra, the lord of heavens, for sons. She gives birth to 3 sons, Yudhishthira, Bhima, and Arjuna. So Yudhishthira, Bhima, and Arjuna were born to Kunti through these gods, that is of Dharma, Vayu, and Indra. So 3 gods. So she had received a boon from Durvasa that she could use this special mantra to invoke any of these gods for sons. Kunti shares her mantra with the younger queen Madri, who bears the twins Nagula and Sahadeva. So this is how the 5 sons of Pandu's birth or comes into existence. He could not sear a son because of the curse. So neither Kunti nor Madri could have any sons from Pandu because of the curse, and therefore Kunti uses the boon which she had received from Durvasa or sage Durvasa and uses this to the god Dharma, Vayu, and Indra, and she had 3 sons from these 3 gods. And then she shares with Madri the special mantra, and then she also got the twins Nagula and Sahadeva through these Ashwini twins. However, Pandu and Madri indulge in sex, and Pandu dies. Madri dies on his funeral pyre out of remorse. Kunti raises the 5 brothers who are born, then from then on usually referred as the Pandava brothers. So this is the little bit of the history how they were born. So 3 to Kundi and 2 to Madri. So Pandu had 2 marriages, Kundi and Madri. And Pandu himself could not have any sons because of the curse he had on him on account of his shooting the arrow and hitting the sage Kidama, and who cursed Pandu. If ever he had any sexual intercourse, he would immediately die. And that's what happened to him when he had sexual intercourse with Madri. Thereafter he dies, and Madri dies in the funeral pyre of Pandu. And then from then onwards, Kunti brings up all these 5 brothers. So that's how the story of the Pancha Pandavas we have. Dhritarashtra has 100 sons. So that's one side of the story, 2 princes, Dhritarashtra and Pandu. And the story, some little bit about them, how things have turned up.